Welcome to Conquering Quadratics Part 1. My name is Ashley Tavis, and I'm one of the co-founders of csandmath.org. In this video, you will learn how to use the quadratic formula in order to calculate real solutions. Let's get started. So on the right-hand side here, you will see I've just uploaded a handful of sprites. I've got my rainbow that kind of reminds me of a parabola. I created this above text here to represent a quadratic equation using the costumes. So if you come in here and you paint a sprite, you can use the text and so forth to create this piece, and you'll see why I made this in a second. And finally, I uploaded the formula, the quadratic formula, to remind our users what we're using. I'm going to go back. We can use any sprite here as we start. But as we start this program, what we're going to want to do is get input from the user what our a, b, and c value are in our quadratic equation. So right away, if we come down to the variables, we're going to hit make a variable. I'm going to have a, b, and c. Now you'll see on the right hand side why I set up my program this way. If I double click any of these, so my c value now looks as follows, double click my b value and my a value, we can see as the user types in the numbers here what our equation would look like. So again, this is a visual preference, but I think this will be really user friendly. So right away at the start of the program, we are going to ask the user using sensing, what is the a value? And whatever they type in is going to be stored in this answer block. So we want to actually store this in our variable that we called a. Whatever they type in, we want to store here. Now, a quick shortcut, we could two-finger tap or right-click and hit duplicate, because now I want to know what is the b value. And finally, one more, what is the c value? Now let's try this out. So what is the a value? We'll say 1, 4, and 7. Now you'll notice the only thing that changed here was my a value. We need to make sure in our drop down I'm changing my letter b and I'm changing my letter c. Let's try this again. So 1, 3, 7. Perfect. And this is really visually nice for our users, as we can see exactly what the equation was going to be. So the next part of our program we should take care of is the discriminant. So as we know with quadratic equations, with the discriminant being a positive number, we're going to have two solutions. Equal to 0, we're going to have 1, and if it's negative, we're going to have no real solutions. So the first thing we want to do is create another variable. We'll call it the discriminant. And we are going to set our discriminant to b squared minus 4ac. So all of our mathy blocks lie here in the operators. So b squared, we'll need a minus, some times blocks here, a couple of these. All right, super, let's set this up. So in here, we're going to have 4 times a times c. We're going to have b squared here to start, and order of operations will matter. We want to take b squared and then subtract 4 times a times c, and this will give us our discriminant. Great. And you'll notice the discriminant shows up on the screen. We can choose, we can leave that if you prefer. Otherwise, we can just uncheck this box here and it will go away. Wonderful. All right, now we have 3 situations. So we're going to need an if, then else block here. So in control, I'm actually going to do a nested loop. We're going to start with if. And I'll scroll up a bit. My code is blocked here. Here we go. So the first situation we could have is we could have, after we calculate our discriminant, we could have our discriminant be greater than 0, so a positive solution. Now in this case, what we want to happen is we know we're going to have 2 solutions in this case. So we can put all of this code in here, but I'm going to show you how to create a function today, as I feel this is going to clean up our code a bit. So how do we create a function? I'm going to come down to my blocks, and I'm going to hit make a block, and I'm going to call this root calculation. And we'll hit OK. Now you'll notice a couple of things show up. First, this define block, and second is this block over here. So this block here calls the function. Whatever we want the function to do is going to happen on this side of the screen. So let's start with our define block. So how would we calculate our roots here? Well, let's create some more variables. We could call them roots, we could call them zeros. I'm going to call them 0, 1, and we'll have 0, 2. Wonderful. Okay, so for 0, 1, we need to take -1 times b. So now we're using our equation here. -1 times b. We'll do the plus piece of our equation first. Plus, now we need the discriminant, the square root of the discriminant. So square root's all the way at the bottom here. It says absolute value, but this is a drop down. And we can go square root of our variables, discriminant. So we're going to add these together first. And then we're going to divide this entire piece by, grab from the middle, by 2 times a. So simply using our equation here to plug in some values. 2 times a. Great. So here's my first 0, and this is what we'll calculate inside this define block. Now I'm just going to hit duplicate here from my 0, 2, because the only thing that's going to change in this piece is I need to subtract rather than add. So this saves a little bit of time here. So we'll subtract, we'll do -1 times b minus square root of the discriminant divided by 2a. So all we've done here is define what we want this function to do. In order to call this function, we come back to my blocks and I can put in this root calculation here. So when I get to this piece of my code, it's going to call this function to the right. Great. All right, from here, if it calculates these zeros, we may want to say what comes out when we use these zeros. So let's come back in here and I'm going to say, we're going to use some join blocks here because we're going to combine some variables and we would call it a string, so some text. And we're going to say the roots are, we can say, let's see, 0, 1. Now we'll need another join block. This really just gives us a sentence here. And 0, 2. So it will calculate them and then it will say what they are. Great. Okay, we've got our positive discriminant here. The next piece we want to take care of is what if our discriminant is equal to 0? So I'm going to come back to control and I'm going to put, this is called a nested loop. So if this isn't true, we're going to come down and read here. The next piece I want to read is I want to read what if my discriminant is equal to 0? Well, in this case we know that we're going to have one solution. So I'm going to go ahead and do the root calculation still, knowing that if I am subtracting or adding 0, either 0, 1 or 0, 2, they're going to give us the same solution here. So as we share our join here, now we'll just recreate this. As we share the solution here, we can just say, grab a couple join blocks, and we can share here for this piece, we can say the root is, and we can choose either 0, 1 or 0, 2 as we've declared that these are going to give us the same answer. Wonderful. And finally our last piece, so if we don't have a positive discriminant and we do not have a discriminant equal to 0, this means in this case that our discriminant is going to be negative, which means here in this case that we can share a message that will say there are no real solutions. Fabulous. The one other thing I can think of that we could add to this program as we look at our main screen, as I run this, let's kind of format this a little nicer. We'll put our zeros down below so we can see these very clearly. The other thing I think is just resetting these variables can sometimes be nice as we start. So I'm going to make one more block and I'm going to call it reset. And we'll drag this right to the start of our program. And when we hit reset here, we want to put all of our variables back to either 0 or maybe a question mark. So we'll say set A to 0, set B to 0, and C, and 0, 1, and 0, 2. So now you'll notice as I start my program, everything resets back to 0, which kind of is a standard, nice way to start a program here. All right, this is the video and this is the program. So I would say with students and with yourself, test this out for something that you know is going to have a positive discriminant, a discriminant equal to 0, and a negative discriminant to be sure that your program is working efficiently. Thank you so much for watching.